And you're very welcome to another edition of the programme. And this evening we're coming to you from one of the most magical places in County Galway, Coole Park, once the home of Lady Gregory and the place from which the poet W.B.Yeats drew the inspiration for so many of his works.
Through so many storms, through 150 years or more, Coole has been a place of peace. We came through the Land League days and through the sale of the outlying property without war, without police protection or any application to the county for compensation, for there were no outrages. Coole has been not only a place of peace throughout all that time, but a home of culture in more senses than one. Arthur Young found Mr. Gregory making a noble nursery, the plantations for which would change the face of the district, and those woods still remain. My husband added rare trees to them, and I have added acres and acres of young wood. Robert loved it, and showed its stern, wild beauty in his paintings. I have lived here and loved it these 40 years, and through the guests who have stayed here, it counts for much in the awakening of the spiritual and intellectual side of our country. If there is trouble now, and it is dismantled and left to ruin, it will be the whole country's loss. I pray, pray, pray.
Here on this tree, the guests who stayed at Coole carved their initials. Many great names are recorded here. John Millington Synge, George Bernard Shaw, William Butler Yeats, and a young Dublin working man called Sean O'Casey. They stood here sheltering from the showers that drove them off the tennis court, and their knives left this record. George William Russell, A.E. Here at Coole they found peace and inspiration.
All here so radiant, so decorated, the great white horse chestnuts in bloom, the smaller red ones, the crimson and white hawthorn, lilac and laburnum, the leaves so fresh, the paths carpeted with the brown blossoms of the beech. It would have been a pity to forsake this home and leave it to desolation. Today Mr. Reid of the Land Commission and Mr. Donovan of the Forestry Commission came and formally took over Coole, took possession. It no longer belongs to any one of our family or name. I am thankful to have been able to keep back a sale for these years past, for giving it into the hands of the forestry people makes the maintenance and improvement of the woods secure, and will give employment and be for the good and dignity of the country.
Those words were drawn from Lady Gregory's diary written in the 1920s, and as that decade came to a close, well, her dream appeared to have come true. The state did in fact take over Coole House and the Forest Park. However, while the state valued the Forest Park and indeed has preserved it beautifully, it placed no value whatever on the house which Lady Gregory herself loved so much, and they tore it down, and all that remains is the plinth on which it stood. A house which the poet Yeats had frequently visited, and of which he wrote, "Here, traveller, scholar and poet take your stand, when all those rooms and passages are gone." These days, this wonderful park is run by the Forestry and Wildlife Service of the Department of the Environment, Heritage and Local Government. And the chief guide here at Coole is Hilda McLaughlin. Hilda, easy to be judgmental looking back on another time, but why did they pull the house down?
Well, you're talking about the 1930s and 1940s, Michael, when at that time there wasn't so much money in the state, and the main focus here at Coole was on development of the forestry. Management of Coole was taken on by the Forestry Service, and the aim was to develop a timber industry, to plant softwoods, pines, to be used in the timber industry.
Of course, Lady Gregory herself wanted that in part. She wanted employment for the local people.
She did indeed, she did. And also she planted many trees herself. Sean O'Casey said her two great loves were her books and her trees. Her books nearest her mind and her trees nearest her heart. And I think that while she would regret the house being gone now, that she would see that the woods and the trees have been cared for.
And this is the famous autograph tree.
It is, yes.
The first thing that strikes me is a magnificent copper beech.
It is, yes. Probably about 150, 200 years old. In 1898, Lady Gregory asked Yeats to initial the tree, and his were the first of many, many signatures put onto it, including her own and her son Robert Gregory, R.G., who tragically died in the First World War. Other names that you can see, or initials that you can see on the tree, include Sean O'Casey, W.B.Yeats, the artist and W.B.'s brother, and then G.B.S., whose signature is still the most visible on the tree today.
So as we know, Yeats was a frequent visitor here, and he drew his inspiration for one of his most famous poems from this area.
The Wild Swans at Coole, yes, written by Yeats, about what is, I suppose, the most important part of Coole now, the Turlough, the lake, and that landscape.
Hilda, one of Lady Gregory's observations at the time when the Land Commission took over the estate was that there would be secure employment. Has that happened?
Here at Coole, to a certain extent, yes, there would be about 5 full-time employees, I suppose. But within the hinterland of Gort, tourism has developed from it, and other opportunities, hotels, restaurants, etc. And of course, it brings people to Coole as well.
So Lady Gregory's fears for Coole Park have been unfounded to the extent that her beloved trees and parklands not only remain, but these days thrive as a tourism centre. Well, not too far away